let's look at the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Tetsuya Naito's journey so far. So he beat Gabe Kidd in a match after selling a lot of the way very early. And he played most of this one dazed and was kind of laying on the mat, didn't do a whole lot because Gabe was kind of steamrolling him until he got that inside cradle out of nowhere off the Destino attempt or the Tornado DDT attempt. You know, he's kind of developed this way of getting in and out of small packages and inside cradles. That was a good way to get through a match without having to do a ton. Because, you know, like I said, his knees have still been pretty shaky here. He defeated Shota in Korakuen in a really good match. Umino came out hot early. He hit that DDT over the top rope where he slings himself over the top rope. His opponent's through the ropes toward the outside and kind of drops all the way to the floor while DDTing his opponent on the apron. It's a cool looking move. As long as your knees hold up again. And then he also got the tornado DDT on the floor. He got the ignition. All that was pretty early in the match. And then there was a really good build to the big moves, and Umino stopped a Destino, hit a Fisherman's Death Rider, but Naito got another inside cradle to win. So the story for Naito is he's taking these beatings from guys and then barely scraping by. He's managing to slip through. His finisher isn't working. He's shaky on the ropes. His knees are bothering him. His neck is bothering him. But he keeps finding ways to just squeak by these guys and score points. And, of course, he had the very rough start to the tournament, so he has to win. But he's finding these little ways to get through. And then he beat Callum Newman in Yokohama, the Yokohama Budokan. And Newman got some shine in this one, but this was as close to a definitive win as Naito's gotten all tournament. He hit the half a Destino, then he hit the full Destino, and it was probably the most solid just victory over a guy that he's had the whole time as he heads toward all of the various scenarios for getting into the playoffs that we'll get into a little bit later. So wins across the board for Naito, and in mostly scrape by fashion with a win over a guy who had already been eliminated from the tournament contention, Callum Newman.
So was that the last of his matches? No, he had one more, right?
No, that was it. The Newman one was today's.
Okay, I was looking at what he had left, which was Great Okan. So
that's an interesting.
Naito's been fine. You know, like he's been better in these matches than he was in the last few weeks. And I don't know whether it's just like the opponents were better suited for the match that needed to happen or whatever. But the thing that I started to take away was that this is a signature Naito pathway to the G1.
Yeah.
It is what happens every time. Like he makes that comeback at the very end, and indescribably he makes it through, and we're comfortable with that. Great Okan might beat him.
Yeah, maybe. You know, it's
like that's a punch in the face.
It might happen. And you know, the thing is with Naito, he's always been vulnerable. He is never, even when he was Stardust Naito, when he was heel LIJ Naito, he was never a guy that steamrolled people. He was never a guy that just mowed for. He's never been a force of nature in the ring. The Naito character has always been the Stardust. He was the underdog, the plucky underdog, right? As he turned heel and went LIJ, he cheated to win. You know, he look at his wins. They were with when Evil made his debut, when Sonata made his debut. That's how he won titles and things like that. You know, Bushi turning heel and going with him after being on the Hantai side for so long. When he went back to being a babyface, when the crowd basically turned LIJ around,
right?
Then it became the whole thing of he's the babyface who's taking on all these forces of nature and figuring out ways to beat them through guile and wit. He's never been a steamroller. And this version of Naito in his older age is simply as a guy who is absolutely getting by on smarts and slipping through the cracks. If you give him any opening, he finds it. That's the story they're telling with him right now. It also means that at any given point, they can put somebody over on him. You know, because and have it look, not have it look ridiculous. Kazuchika Okada couldn't really realistically lose to everyone, could he? Some of those would have looked silly. Naito, you can see a guy getting a hold of him. If you don't show him that crack for him to slip through, anyone can beat him. And that includes Great Okan, who's on a hell of a roll right now in the storyline.
Yes.
So nothing's in the bag. And but you know, it's certainly more interesting when the champ's in there.
I've always considered Naito to be I don't know if you'll get this reference. I think you will. Like, you're not completely out of comic books and Marvel, but he's Loki. You know, like he's the trickster. And the good version and the bad version of Loki, you know, when he does the bad things, he pulls other people into his tricks and he pulls things out. But when he's the good guy, he's got to figure out using those same tricks, but not hurting anybody. I've always kind of seen Naito and Loki as kind of like the same kind of archetype used in different mediums. So that's that. This is the year where Naito could theoretically not make it to post block play, and it make no difference on his Wrestle Kingdom future.
We also have this. It's also a possibility. Phenomenal Ace mentions, would it be out of the realm of possibility if Naito simply wins the G1 as champion? We haven't had that in decades. Indeed, no, we have not had that in decades. My only counter to that is, you know, you want the G1 to build up challengers. If Naito wins, then he just names his opponent. And who would that be? You know, like, who would he just name as his opponent? There are choices. I'm not, you know, but it doesn't give the challenger a lot of juice. Now, the only time I could think of when it would really make sense to do that, have the champion win the G1, is if you had someone in your back pocket that would make for a very special dream match at Kingdom. And maybe you can just say, we've got a dominant champion, and now we've got this incredible challenger that we haven't seen before, and it's a match that is either it's been 10 years or it's been, you know, that type of an atmosphere. For instance, if Naito just won the thing and said, Shingo is my teammate, he deserves a shot, it doesn't, then just put Shingo over, you know, like it. Then the challenger almost has to be from outside the company, because then you would just say, well, if that's going to be the challenger at Kingdom, just have him win the G1.
You could do it. Like, it doesn't feel, it feels like you are kneecapping your Wrestle Kingdom opponent, like Steven was saying. And if Zack Sabre Jr. wins another one, say like 14, and Naito's like, all right, you know, you won more than way everyone else, you should be my Wrestle Kingdom like opponent. Why wouldn't you just have Zack just win the matches to earn it that way? But you could have like some person in the middle of the G1 that like, no, you beat me in the middle of the G1. I don't know. Like, but like I said earlier, I'm okay if Zack Sabre Jr. doesn't win this G1, because I feel like there are a ton of compelling different directions. And if Naito's the one to win it, I'm going to sit back and enjoy the show and hope that they know what they're doing. Because right now I feel confident, and the way that they've done everything, I feel confident about what they're doing. And they could fuck it all up in the next week. But I don't think that they are. I think they have an idea where they're going.